I kind of expected everyone to be like, oh my goodness, it's finally the Rebirth video. No. Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Mr. here. Today I am back to once again talk about Darkface Gredora. This is, I think, the third time I've done a Gredora deck profile on this channel, if not more, which is concerning. So I may have to see a psychologist after this. But anyways, today we are covering the Cradle deck from Megacolony. So the Cradle deck is the deck that was introduced in VBT10 and has not received Cradle-based support afterwards, because in V, Megacolony basically is entitled to one-time supports for everything, and that's it. They've only started to recently change that by introducing more generic support, which is, some argue a bit too late, but some are appreciative of it, such as myself. So honestly, it's kind of nice to see some generic support actually working, and there's a card that actually solves Cradle's biggest problem. So I will be discussing all of that in the video, so do stay tuned. I'm really excited for it. I understand some people just absolutely detest Megacolony because of Order Colony and whatnot. I think that's fine. I myself do not appreciate Order Colony, but I feel in V, it's still a really fun clan to play. I mean, even in Premium, if you just don't play Order Colony, it's still fun, I guess. But in V even, there is multiple ways to play Megacolony. I think that's really fun, stuff like your Giraffe, stuff like Momma Gredora, stuff like Master Beetle, your Machinings even. I think it's actually pretty fun. So let's get right into it. Our grade 3s, we play 4 copies of Gredora, obviously, 2 copies of Darkface, and then 3 copies of Hell Demise. So as you notice, this list doesn't seem to have changed, at least from this perspective. Why is that? Because honestly, this is all you need for the Cradle deck. Momma Gredora, she has 2 skills. Once per turn, you counterblast 1. You choose 2 of your opponent's rear guards that do not have cradles, and then you cradle it. So, what exactly is a cradle? A cradle is a marker that you can install onto your opponent's rear guards. I mean, you should know that if you clicked on this video, but if you don't, it's fine. So, what is a cradle? A cradle, you put it on your opponent's rear guard, they lose their original power. So let's say I put it on a Blaster Blade, he turns from a 10k into a no k. Okay, pretty simple. They lose their abilities, but they keep their name, race, and nation, and clan. So that's alright. A cradle unit cannot boost, but it can attack, even though it's your power. So you have to stack, I don't know, 5 force on the thing, haha, and then maybe it'll work. Who knows? A cradle unit, when it is retired, you actually can search your deck for a card of the same grade and add it to your hand. So let's say I cradled a Blaster Dart, and Blaster Dart is retired. I get to look for a grade 2 of my choosing from my deck, anyone I wish. So cradles are basically free tutors and free lockdowns on specific units, which is cool. So counterblast 1, if you cradle 2, basically it's kind of like a +2 advantage, which is nice. It's cool, but this is where it gets sad. You need to retire the cradle, then you actually get the effect to search. So if it is moved to soul, bound, locked, anything, return to deck, you lose the cradle. You do not get to hatch this 8, you do not get to search. Which sucks, because a lot of decks can do that. You have Narukami with Selfbind, you have, Pale Moon or Majesty or Blaster, they move stuff to soul. You have stuff like even the reverse, which can lock their own rear guards. So if that's the case, then what the heck's the point of Cradle? So you notice that Cradle actually has a lot of bad matchups. It has matchups that it can absolutely excel in and lock down the opponent to Kingdom Come, but there's just some matches that you just straight up die, which is a problem. And I've tried to hide this from because I'm very loving towards Momma Gredora, but the fact is that, it's actually not that good. But this weakness is solved. This weakness is solved this set, so I will get into that later on in the video. The second skill is much more generic and much more useful. When she attacks, you retire one of your rear guards, you search your deck for a grade 3 unit and superior colle. This unit and that unit gain 10,000 power. Okay, it's a basic multi-attack start after the Strike Gredora. That's fine. I think it's really nice and useful. You can kind of see a lot of the deck is really built into the Queen. Rightfully so, we are all Sims here, so it's kind of nice to see that in one card you kind of get the complete idea. It serves as a basic multi-attack, but also gives you the start to a lot of great control. I don't have to say this, Gredora's cradle skill is the best way to cradle this deck. So that's generally how you want to go. But let's say you are the more submissive type. Then maybe you'll like Darkface. Darkface is the original Darkface. And yeah, he's basically, he started his own archetype and then he became, the sim. He's the main sim. But he's actually a good card in a lot of instances, and that's why we still see him played here. But why? On Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, when placed, you discard a card from your hand, choose one of your opponent's rearguards, and cradle it. Yeah, that's fine. It's a discard one to cradle, so basically it's a net 0 if the cradle pops off. Alright, second skill is, when he attacks on VOR, you counterblast 1, you choose one of your opponent's rearguards for the cradle and retire it. This unit gains power equal to the grade. So basically, you can combine both skills together by, when placing him, you cradle something. When he attacks, you counterblast 1, you eat that cradle, Darkface gains extra power, you get extra search. Alright, I think that's really nice as a card. And notice he's VOR, so if you, let's say, really like a Darkface, but you're on a budget, you could actually build a cradle budget deck around Darkface. I'm not going to try it because she means too much to me, but you totally could, and it's a really good rearguard as well. So do keep that in mind. The reason why we only played it 2 is because Darkface is just not that great, given that we already played 4 copies of Gredora. But he still needed in this deck because 1, he actually helps you retire the cradle, which means he's actually very critical in some matchups where you actually need to counterplay the opponent's counterplay. Because if you know your opponent can actually destroy your cradles without you searching and benefiting, Darkface is your number 1 route to keep making sure that you will still gain the advantage that you should have gotten from your cradles normally. So do keep that in mind. And also because we actually have some Darkface related support for both Darkface and Darkface Gredora. So, alright, that's stuff I just need to get out of the way. Our last grade 3 for now is Hell Demise. Hell Demise was naturally reprinted from a common to a triple rare, but I mean, if you bought the triple rare version of this, why? When placed on the rearguard circle, choose one of your opponent's rearguards and rest it in the same column, then choose one of your own rearguards and stand it. It's an on place. It's an on place, which means you can actually search your deck for a Hell Demise and superior call it with Gredora, and then you basically stand another one of your rearguards, either front row, back row. And you have 3 attacks again. 2 attacks again. Great. Absolutely wonderful. That's how this is supposed to work, I think. But if you place this on the rearguard circle, on your normal main phase, it's kind of useless except for one instance where you actually have some of your great ones resting themselves, like Butterfly Officer or your high class moth. So you get to spend a 6k on 8k unit that's already paid its cost for the turn. Not the best usage. Sincerely not the best usage, but it's something I should bring up. It's ideally something you call during the battle phase. The second skill is that your opponent cannot stand units in the same column as this guy. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that works. But considering the fact that you are trying to cradle everything, you notice that cradles actually have a very bad synergy with both stands and cradles. So I need you to keep this in mind throughout this video because we're going to actually try and solve this as much as possible. Actually, the stand thing can't really be solved. It's mostly through your own skill. Our grade 2s, we play 4 copies of Sticky Bolus, 3 copies of Stamping Red, who is very featured in my last deck profile. But our main winner today is Megacolony Bella S from V Klein Collection 5. So, what makes this card so good? What is it about this card that saves the deck? Well, I'm going to explain all of them for you right now. We start off with Sticky Bolus. Sticky Bolus is a very iconic, well, I mean she's new, but she's more iconic to the V Cradle set. When placed on VOR, you counterblast 1. Look at the top 6 cards of your deck and add up to 1 Darkface card of different names to your hand, which means you can add 1 Darkface and 1 Darkface Gredora, as long as you find it. Now, I understand that we only play 2 Darkface, so most of the time you're only going to be adding Gredora, but that's fine. It's a nice skill. You don't have to use this all the time though, but it is something that you could actually use your counterblast for turn 2 and onwards, because you know this unit, you will have counterblast as long as you play that correctly, so it's fine. Second skill is when she attacks, you Soul Blast 1. You gain 6,000 power for each cradle. If this unit's power exceeds 20,000 or more, you draw a card. That's right, Megacolony has Burst. And it works. It's nice because the more cradles you accumulate on the board, you actually get a draw, which is really cool. And it doesn't matter because you actually have cards that can give your rearguards power. So you don't actually have to have cradles per se in order to draw. It's just burst 20k or higher, you draw, which also counts for the boost. So yeah, it's just nice altogether. It's a really funnily but effectively designed card. If you're playing cradles, this is a 4th. Even if you're playing a budget Darkface, you definitely need to play this. It's just that good. But of course, the next card is Stamping Red from my previous deck profile, the one that I really wanted to cover. Stamping Red, when placed on VLR, you counterblast 1, you choose one opponent's unit without cradle, and you cradle it. If not, you draw. So, this is the card that I was saying is really good against counterplay, but it just got better. But why is this still good? It's basically a counterblast for draw 1. I mean, is there really an argument against that? If your opponent has a rearguard, you just cradle it, right? But if your opponent does not have a rearguard, then you just draw. Nice. Nice. There's just no way around it. It's just that flexible. It's really nice to see. But what's the second skill? Its second skill is on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle. When this unit attacks, if your opponent has a cradle, it gains 6k. So it's effectively a 15k beater on both V and R. Alright, so Sticky Bowlers also gain 6k for each cradle. This unit gains 6 as long as there is a cradle. So 6k seems to be the magic power. I mean, there was also one more unit that gained 6k if I'm not mistaken, but we threw her out of the deck because she's no longer good enough. I think it's Yumfo Scythe, I can't remember. But she's not good anymore. These are still good. You should still be playing these. And finally, Megacolony Valor S. The main reason why you probably clicked on this video, or if you're not sure what it does, I'm going to explain it to you. And I'm going to put this here, just so you know what's going on. When placed on the rearguard circle, you Soul Blast 1, your opponent chooses a card from their hand and call it as rest. No auto skills activate, they cannot stand this unit during your next stand phase. Then your opponent draws a card. What's the deal? You just gave them hand cycling. I mean, it's a horrible card. You paid Soul Blast just to give them a cycle 1. But there's now a unit on their board. That's right. There is now a unit on their board. If your opponent was intending to deny you the cradle strategy and just not do anything, they've now left a cradle on the board. Perfect food for Momma Gredora. Do you understand the implications of this? I mean, it's fine if you don't. Nobody plays this deck very often. The point is that right now, your opponent has no counterplay towards avoiding cradle. Your opponent just can't, oh, I'm going to use Agglovel and bounce my whole board, keep it in my hand, and I'm going to laugh at you. It's not an option anymore. With this card, you can actually force your opponent to call. And these are not once per turn. As many copies of this as you have in circulation, you actually can force your opponent to keep calling. And Soul's not an issue, because we do have stuff like, Butterfly Officer. So, you won't be saying, oh, I'm running out of Soul. You won't. And this is the only card that uses Soul. But it gets even better. From the drop zone, you can choose a card from your hand and discard it once per turn. You can superior call this card from the drop zone to a rearguard circle, and you soul charge 1. It perfectly refunds itself on revive. How much could you want? It revives itself and it pays its own cost for its next skill activation. Soul blasting, which means you set up the drop zone. It's perfect. It works so well. I mean, you don't want to write this, but just keeping this in your hand as a rearguard, you can effectively just keep fishing cards off your opponent's hand. Yes, you are forcing them to call, so it is a +1 in terms of no, not +1. It's a net 0. Sorry, it's a net 0 if your opponent gets a drop, which they do. But if not, you still install units, which means they just cannot avoid cradle anymore. It's huge news. I mean, there's other decks that can really abuse this, but I feel that this is personally the one card I would say saves Gredora. If you are planning to play any form of cradle, this is a 4-off. No questions asked. It really just works. Of course, I wish the card would be better, because the card's not perfect. The card is a vanilla after it's on place, and you need to retire it then you can actually reuse its skill to keep fishing. It's not an X skill, it's not a play skill. So, sorry, it's not like that has no weakness. It's not like, oh, Cradle there's 0, it's gonna take down Prism. No, absolutely not. But it is something you can definitely take in mind for the few Cradle players still left on the planet. That this card actually saves the deck. And of course, moving on to our grade 1s, we play 4 copies of High Class Morph, 4 copies of Little Dorcas, 4 copies of Butterfly Officer, and 1 PG. So let's actually break this down. Why are we playing the cards that we are playing? Because it's a little confusing to some people, right? You would be like, hey, what is this? So yeah, let's actually explain. So the 1 PG is because, like I said, you actually can search your deck for stuff with Cradle, which means if you have a rear guard on your opponent's side that's a grade 1, you could actually toolbox and look for a PG. It's not the best application, but it's a nice application to carry around. Of course, Little Dorcas is our grade 3 searcher, but like I mentioned with Hell the Mice, we don't really have a great stand synergy in this deck. I mean, yes, even though you do have stuff like Megacolony Ballad S, which does help you in that aspect as well, imagine that. But this card's still not that great because its plus 5k condition is if your opponent has no cards in stand. As long as your opponent has a Cradle, Cradles can't really be stood or rest. I mean, you can still stand the Cradle, but in any case, then it still counts as a unit is at stand because, they're Cradle, not rested. So yeah, that is a problem with Little Dorcas, which is why some people just completely cut him out for Cradle decks, and it's totally acceptable. I mean, it's fine. But to me, I just value that consistency in making sure I see her every grade 3 turn. So yeah, I do actually want to keep playing Little Dorcas, but this is a slot that you can certainly cut if you're quite sick of this guy. More resources to come. We play High Class Morph, who has recently been reprinted, but I happen to own the original. Wow, good monetary decisions. Rearguard circle, you can rest this unit. You choose a normal unit from your drop zone and put it to the bottom of your deck. You countercharge 1 and your opponent is unable to intercept for the rest of this turn. Hard once per turn, skill. So you can't actually have a back row of High Class Morphs and then you just keep getting CC3 or whatnot. No, this is not shout. But you can keep 1 copy in circulation and then you can just keep doing it, which is nice. It's a nice card to have. But you may be wondering, why on earth would I play 4 if it's a hard once per turn skill and it rests itself? What's the point? In the soul and in the deck, it counts as a grade 3. This has major implications in Cradle. Why is that? Number 1, it counts as a grade 3, which means you can search it off a Cradle. If you destroy one of your opponent's rear guards, Ashura Kaiser, or God knows what, you can search your deck for this guy instead and add it to your hand instead of searching for grade 3, which is a 10k shield. It is appreciated. But what's the second application? The second application is you can search it out with a grade 3 searcher. So that's why Little Dorcas still gets its slot, because it still serves this secondary purpose. And High Class Morph is flexible enough to count itself as a grade 3 and a grade 1. Of course, High Class Morph serves a lot better decks, stuff that actually needs grade 3s and souls like Gunding Tolingo. But if not, it actually does a lot of great benefits for the Cradle deck. So, especially because he has been reprinted. I understand from the Megacolony champion Duke that there's been some issues with High Class Morph being quite expensive in the West, but with it being reprinted, I would say you have a very fair game of actually picking it up. I will leave a link to Duke's channel in the comment section below. He's a great guy, by the way. And of course, we play 4 copies of Butterfly Officer. Yes, this card has also been reprinted, but I still own it in the common. Why? When placed in general, you just rest this unit, choose one of your rear guards against 10,000 power, and at the end of the turn, you must move that unit into the soul and you countercharge 1. There's your soul, there's your countercharge. Although the countercharge is quite delayed, you have to wait till the end of your turn to get it. So do actually keep in mind that High Class Morph is still a little bit faster in terms of instantaneous countercharge, but this still in overall does help. And you do still give a unit 10k, which means you can actually play into your burst cards. And it also helps you with the fact that you actually do get a restanding rearguard, so you actually gain more mileage of this 10k boost. Alright, it's it works, it works. So do continue to play this card in your cradle decks. Our grade zeros, we play this is 11 crits, 1 draw, 4 heal, and a starter. Why, oh why, oh why? This is because in cradle decks, you filter your deck a lot, assuming you're playing the cradles correctly. So there is no reason for you to play draw. I mean, we play 1 draw. Draw is still nice in this deck, but we want to focus on just killing the opponent. You notice that we are a lockdown style deck, but we have no way of naturally killing. So if by burning the game through attrition, we can allow our crits for a nice 1 shot. And don't forget, we actually have a pretty good turn 2 game, which means you can actually pull some more crits and it would still work. So that's why we're playing 11 crits. It's a very weird number, trust me. 1 draw PG, because draw PGs are still nice in protect decks, So I actually play 2 in my Grand Blue deck, but I still think 1 is fine, especially because we actually play 1 in the main deck lineup. You would have remembered this if you did skip the section. So yeah, it's actually all playing around together. For heals, we're playing our base heals because we do actually want to see our color blast and we want to live in the late game. Our late game is where Gredora thrives, so you need to make sure that you actually live during that segment. You don't have to worry about the early game because we have a pretty good early game with this deck. Starter. Alright, and that wraps up the Gredora deck profile. So I take literally every excuse at this point to just keep talking about this deck. And like I said, I believe I have a problem. I will be seeing a psychologist soon. But I am very happy for Gredora. I may have a problem, but she no longer has a problem in terms of actually playing because a lot of her weaknesses have now been solved. It took them a while. It took Wishy a while to play, and it works, especially because a pure cradle strategy is really reactive, which doesn't help because if you just have nothing to react to, what's the point? But Megacolony Bella S really fills up that niche, and it helps. So I look forward to covering Gredora again in another 6 to 8 months if there is support in that V-call for us, or if not, just covering this offhand somewhere. I love you too much. Thank you all so much for watching. It's another V-call deck profile, and I know what a lot of you are saying. You said the Rebirth will be next. Yes, it will be next, hopefully, because I don't actually own the deck, as you know, because I'm poor, but someone that I do know owns the deck, and someone that you guys are really familiar with on this channel will be covering this deck really soon. So please look out for it. I guarantee you it should be quite worth the wait unless its quality has dropped. I doubt it. It's still really good. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.